Hi, welcome back to Operations Utopia. My name is Matt Neal, and today I'm speaking with Scott Cleve. Across more than 20 years at Accenture, AbbVie, Astellas, Boehringer Ingelheim, Bluebird Bio, and now Daiichi Sankyo, Scott has built and led global Reg Ops organizations through wave after wave of new technology, and he's figured out a few things about how change actually sticks. Scott and I have a great conversation here about the changing roles of Reg Ops. So enjoy my conversation with Scott Cleve. So I wanted to ask you, because you've been through this gauntlet, kind of ahead of the curve in the changes that have happened to regulatory operations over the, past decade, I would say significantly in the role of the job and in the role of operations. So I wanted to give you some time to maybe chat about that and what you've seen and what you think we did. What you did right, what you did wrong, what you would do differently, and sort of how this has evolved and how you've been so successful at change management, because it's one of the hardest nuts to crack.
Yeah, completely. I don't know if I have all the right answers, but I'll run down experience. And I think the largest, or my first large organization I inherited, was at Boehringer Ingelheim. So that for me was kind of a personal and a professional challenge. So one, could I adopt to a large family-owned multinational company that had a different time horizon, a different culture? I was coming from the US and living and working in Germany. And seeing if my approach style worked in that environment. And also taking on a global organization with footprints in Japan, China, Europe, and the US. So fantastic learning experience.
Yeah.
And really where it settled was understanding the needs of the regulatory organization and our partners. And so requirements gathering, we all do that.
Yeah.
And second, assessing the talent and skills of the organization. Where were we strong?
Yeah.
Where did we need to grow? If we needed to grow, did that also align with our priorities for the department or the company? And then for the other activities, we had a large outsourcing activity to build regulatory operations centers of excellence globally. What fit there that we can house in those areas? And I think that helped give people prioritization over what they needed to focus on and accomplish. So one, as an organization, we could hang our hats on what we did well and what we were going to deliver. And then two, when we aligned on those areas we needed to invest in or improve in, we had buy-in from the organization to give us time to get there. And one of those areas was digital back in 2016, 17, 18. So at that time, and talking about how quickly technology changes, that's when Alexa was coming out, and everyone was talking about, hey, I have Alexa in my house. I can talk to Alexa. My kids are ordering God knows what from Alexa. We looked at that and other opportunities of how do we work this into the workplace? What are the use cases for it? And we had buy-in from the entire organization to do that. So that gave us the flexibility to say, and also built enthusiasm in the organization to say, hey, how do we apply technology to our day-to-day work? And where can we solve problems using it? Yeah. So I think trying to align what the organizational needs are, and then identifying those, innovation areas that people get excited about. I think that helps us be great service partners to the rest of the organization, but also builds enthusiasm with the people in our teams that are excited about new technology or improving how they work.
I forgot about the Alexa thing. That was really big for a minute. Like, you'll just be able to talk to your data. Like, that's interesting. How did it go?
We ran a pilot, so
because that fell apart.
interesting.
Like that's not that is not even on my radar anymore. Like it's
No, and I think
that's so crazy.
I mean,
Yeah.
today with voice capture and everything else, AI does this pretty seamlessly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
at the time, we're working with Alexa, and we realized. So we were trying to capture correspondence from our affiliates because that was always a pain of how do we ingest it into the system
Right.
without them writing an email or a document, sending it to somebody, and then archiving it. So we said, well, what if we did this via voice? And they talked to Alexa. Alexa would create a PDF that we could just automate, and it would be stored in our doc management system. So that was really the concept. And what we realized is Alexa has a really short attention span. So,
Yeah.
and we had to create a script, and it worked, but it was kind of clunky.
Right,
So it
right.
didn't really catch on. We didn't fully roll it out, but as a technical opportunity, it was really interesting to investigate.
Yeah.
And it opened doors to say we can use voice. That's an effective way to capture information. Two, there are tools to take voice to PDF or text that we can then archive as data.
Right.
So I think that helped us in our journey into exploring other tools. And now, with the technology that's here today, that's just blown up. And
Yeah.
we would say that's easy today. Those tools exist.
Yeah. That's so interesting though, because it makes you kind of turn the lens then on AI and wonder like how much of this hype is going to materialize into actual useful impact to our organizations. And I think you hit one there, obviously, where there's implications around voice and translation that are fascinating and should be fairly simple, especially in textual translation, right? Like limited set of characters is kind of, it's going to be foolproof, you would hope at some point. But the adaptation to adopt new technology is the part that's really interesting because you're dealing with then so many people that you have to convince if they don't have to be a Luddite per se, but they might just not feel like learning new software, like not picking it up. Like at some point, I think we all do that. I think I've done that with the iPhone, actually. Like, I'm not paying attention to the updates. I take them. But, like, my daughter comes home and is flying through there. She's like, what do you mean you didn't know you could do this? I'm like, I'm not paying attention anymore. So at some point, you do start letting it go a little bit. But also the curiosity to build it in is also there. So how did you navigate that, maybe through the voice thing, but, like, and apply that today?
So, in most cases, it's finding out who your early adopters are, right? We always have the people in our groups that are tinkerers that want to try to do their job as easy as possible, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So they're exploring the new updates and we can go back as far as the new updates to Word, Excel over time.
Yeah.
And now that's become Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever internal, chat, AI tool you have. And you have people that are trying to maximize those tools and learn them and apply them. Then it's how do we take relevant use cases based on what they're doing that apply to their work or the group or a group's work that makes sense. So one, we've established an advocate. We have somebody that's excited about, just fast forward to AI, about writing prompts that allow them to analyze, summarize, create work product. And then how do we get them to teach and help us build that tool, that capacity, that capability into the rest of the group and show progress. So in a lot of cases, Matt, what we're looking at is a single use case and then applying it to a single project or deliverable to demonstrate progress in it. And if we're able to do that, then we get other people saying, oh, well, that worked for you. Can I try that? And you get this knock-on effect. And when it works, that works wonderfully. When it doesn't work, then how do we apply those lessons learned to the next thing we build and find the next use case where it's appropriate and build that same enthusiasm for using that technology going forward. So that's the concept.
Yeah.
The hard part is getting started and having someone with the idea, with the technical capability, with buy-in from for in our sake, a project, a submission team, et cetera, to apply it, because we're all concerned about timelines and compliance, et cetera, in order for us to deliver what we're required to do.
Are you seeing success, or have you found a successful method for creating new early adopters?
So what I've done is I've set the expectation that we're going to be an innovative organization, and lowering that obstacle of failure from people and saying it's up to us for the organization. Our expectation is that, and we'll boil it down to typical Reg Ops, that we're going to deliver on time, in perfect quality, and deliver exactly what's expected according to requirements to whatever health authority we're submitting to. So we have that expectation of ourselves. Now, in order to improve upon that, we need to lower the barriers to say the ways to improve upon that is to experiment with new technology, new process, etc. And we're going to give you the bandwidth to experiment. And of course, we'll have a sandbox first. We're not going to do it in production, but test it, try it. If it's good enough, let's try it out for real. And then let's learn, and then let's iterate. I think what our struggle has been historically is that iteration loop, and that's often taken way too long. And we sort of get bogged down. But if we allow that iteration piece, we're able to go quicker. And it's finding the use cases that allow us to go quicker. And it seems like with AI, we're able to do that just with the nature of the technology, with being able to build prompts, edit prompts, and which allows us to keep iterating on the accuracy of and the quality of the deliverable it's creating.
Yeah, that it's interesting for the AI part, how different your results are. Like it's like when you're talking about like our business and trying to get standardized results and quality results, and you want repeatable. I mean, that's the whole thing. Is like, you were saying that the drive to do our job faster. It's kind of like everything ends at that bottom line, which is it's got to be on time. It's got to be right. How we get there is where the real magic is, and giving people that mindset. So what are the biggest friction points that do slow you down, even when you have those things in place, right? Like now people are free to go. They're curious. They're trying. They know they can do that. All right, now what? What's the worst? What slows you down?
Well, the obvious one is data, right? Depending on what's driving that process. So is our data structured? Is it clean? Is it correct? Is it complete? In order to be an input into using those tools. So that's first. And that data is probably a whole different topic we can jump into. Second, it's organizational readiness. So for a lot of operations, and even we'll say writing, labeling, etc., we've spent a lot of time building processes that are repeatable. Are they always as efficient as they could be? No, and I think that's why we're continuously improving. But to disrupt them brings a lot of we'll say cautiousness. I don't want to necessarily say fear, but there's a lot of anxiety about changing what people are used to doing. So it's being able to have that capacity to allow people to experiment and practice before we put it into production. So we have that assurance that it's going to work at least as well as the old process did.
Yeah.
The third part is, for us, it's compliance, right? We have these expectations for testing, for documentation, et cetera, that have been in place regarding the systems and tools we use that don't always allow us to go quickly and often challenge our ability to go quickly, which we've talked about quite a bit over the years. And how do we, lessen that burden in order to allow us to iterate and move quickly?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those three obstacles are things that we have to take in mind as we're thinking about the change process with anything we're introducing.
Yeah, it's frustrating because of them sometimes, and certainly slows us down. And I think one of the pieces around this is do we get to a point, we talked about the iPhone a little while ago, like, do you get to the point where the change is just understood as long as the result is the same in terms of the expectation of your organization for, they kind of had that padding baked in, right? Like if a change was coming, they knew well in advance. They, got the training, right? And I put training in air quotes because it doesn't work really, but you still did it. So you check the box. They can't say that they weren't trained, right? So what I've seen is like that whole model just isn't working anymore. And it kind of goes counter to, if we actually do want to go quickly, the organization has to be ready to deal with that change quickly. It's strange that it's always driven out of ops, though. You know what I mean? It's like this is the age-old story is that we are inadvertently the biggest change agents sometimes in these organizations. It's not IT, it's not quality, it's ops, and that speaks to the change, I think, over the years of this organization's seat at the table. They're the conversations that they have to have because of the implications of our systems, really, when it comes down to it. But the organizational issues and the change is still slow. Even if we have all the wind at our back, you still hit that wall. It's so bizarre. And I'm curious how you've viewed that over the years.
Yeah, it is. And I, as you were talking, Matt, I was thinking about something I saw recently, and I shared this with my team, and was talking about how we train and grow in things we do outside of work versus work. And the example they gave, and it's an easy one, of a pro athlete of, since you were 7 years old, you learned how to play soccer, and then you played in high school and you got better with better coaching and feedback, and then you went to university and the same thing happened, and then maybe you go professional. And the whole point of it was each step you're getting feedback and training, and you get to practice and you get more feedback and you keep growing. And in the corporate world, we say, all right, we're implementing a new document management system, and we kick it off, and then 8 to 16 months later, whatever your timeline is, 2 weeks before you're going to use it, we give you training and expect you to be an expert of it.
Yeah.
And it just tells me that we're thinking about how to prepare our employees for change with just totally unrealistic expectations of here's, and unfortunately this still exists, here's the PowerPoint presentation with how to do this, and next week, this is how you're going to work.
Yeah.
And as we know, we have something called hypercare, because for the next 2 months, it's tough.
Yeah.
We're asking people to fundamentally change the way they've worked for X number of years before that with a minimal amount of support. And we've really got to think about, when we're making these changes, introducing new tools, technology, how do we help iterate and bring people along and teach them as we go, so that when the tool is ready, they can use it confidently. And we're still not there. I don't know what the magic sauce is just yet.
Yeah.
But what we're trying to do is really think more proactively about our change management plans around either process or tech change right now. So we're bringing everyone along and not just having this big bang at the end and expecting a perfect use of a system or a process afterwards.
Yeah, there's some it is some hidden magic, because part of me also is like, in some instances it's like you got to rip off the Band-Aid at some point, and dive in, and it requires curiosity on the part of the users as well. But it's so difficult. You can't script it, and you can't plan it the way that you want it to roll out. And different. I'm trying new methods at my spot too, like trying to. I had this revelation at the summit last year. I was like, why are you making me train people on your software? And it's so true. It's like they don't have any even really good resources to do that necessarily, because every company's different, because the culture's different, all that kind of stuff. I understand. But, how do we get to the point where, and I think AI might be part of that answer, is how do you get the point where people are just accepting that change is always happening and it isn't so monumental? You know what I mean? Like, that is a tough one too, because again, with the iPhone, it just keeps coming with Outlook and all of the Microsoft tools. They're constantly changing. So the expectation is lower that anybody's going to give you an explanation, but there's not as much impact on those. Like, you're literally just ignoring things that are in those tools. Whereas sometimes these systems are so woven into our process that change is extremely disruptive. So, do you have change in your group specifically, or do you just absorb it and get better at it?
I think change is just ever present.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, Matt, I think we're getting better at accepting that change is a constant. Because I remember, 5-10 years ago, we heard about change fatigue, which I think still exists.
Yeah.
But I think people now realize, and maybe the digital world, the iPhone example is great. Your TV, other things that all of a sudden you get messages that, software update. Now you have, this functionality, and people just accept that as, hey, my life's maybe improving, or I'm frustrated because I have more buttons. But you get both sets of folks. But I think even in the workplace, it's just accepted that we're continuously changing. And I think part of this is reframing it as we're also continuously improving in most cases.
Yeah.
We're rarely changing to make things worse.
Yeah, rarely.
It may right. It may feel like that initially, but down the line, once people master those skills, they're like, why did we do it the old way in the first place? This is so much better.
Yeah.
So I think as a leader, as a manager, as a coach, as a mentor, it's how do we help people through that change curve and help them see the vision of where we're going. And kind of going back to an earlier point I talked about was setting that expectation for innovation, having a vision of where we're going with the organization. So I can connect the dots to say, all right, we're implementing tool A. Here's what tool A is going to do. On the heels of that, here's tool B. And we're doing this in these steps for this reason, but once they're together, here's what we're going to be able to do. And then let everyone know what the plan is. I think when people are guessing or unsure of a change, I think that makes it more stressful for them too.
Yeah, you're right. It's hard. I think I thought of it like the idea of being in a position to have done it a few times too is also very powerful, but also can be simultaneously frustrating, because you're like, I know it's better over there. Believe me, I can see it, and it's really hard. I talked to my team about, like, I've been to the beach. I know it's there. you guys are still on the other side of the mountain. You can't even see it yet. But when you crest that hill and see it, you'd be like, okay, I understand. So that helps too, that you've gone through it once. People feel a little bit more reasonably assured that you know what you're talking about. So there's that's helpful. But I think the scale of it is so enormous when you talk about big organizational changes at organizations our size. It's daunting, and I think something that is probably not accounted for as well as it needs to be across the board. And it's raising the awareness of it is helpful, but I think your idea there too is like give everybody the full story so they understand what you're talking about, and can have a vision. To me, it's just the timeline is always just like, really, it has to take that long. It really okay, I guess it has to take that long, and then a year disappears before you even know it. It's wild.
Yeah, and Matt, I think it's also rationalizing with your team about that too. Of there are some things we would love to do quicker, and for various reasons, depending on the scale of the change we're putting in, we've got cross-functional partners, we have IT, we have finance, et cetera, and we have to ensure all of these stakeholders are aligned, budgets are aligned in order for us to move forward. And sometimes those administrative steps eat into us going quickly.
Yeah.
But once they're in place, we're often able to move fairly quickly towards implementing the change, the system, whatever.
Yeah.
I was going to say the other part of it is also focusing on what we can control, because there's a lot on our plate, and one of the reasons I think we like this space is there's always change. So we've got regulatory change globally, we've got technology change, and then we have our own organizational change. So at some point, each of those variables is in motion.
Yeah.
And we've got to figure out, what do we need to focus on? What's the important part for our organization? And then we cancel out the noise. And depending on what it is, we handle that in different ways. But how do we keep people focused so they're just not overwhelmed?
Yeah.
And then we just get to stasis, and that's not a good spot either.
Yeah. I was going to say, what is wrong with us? Why do we like this?
Yeah, kind of. Buttons for punishment.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. It is fascinating. The time scale is something that always messes with me. It seems fast once you're over it, but seems insanely slow when you're looking forward at it. And I think that aspect of things has really been interesting for me to watch play out. And I think we're at a time now between AI, whether hype or not, but AI and shared regulatory spaces and data submissions and all these things that are swirling around, it does feel different now than it has for a long time, in that the appetite for change might be catching up to the potential, I don't feel like technology is our limitation anymore at all, at least to move light years ahead. Even if we started today, technology is no longer the limit of that. So it makes it even more like impatient to move forward at the same time. But I think your careful approach is obviously useful.
And Matt, especially when you can visualize what it's going to look like when you harness the technology to what we want to do with it.
Yeah,
and it's like, why can't we just get there now? And then, you go back to say, well, we have to work on our data, and we have these stakeholders we have to engage. And then, how do we get the compliance folks on board with our approach? And, is the health authority even ready for this if we want to do it this way? So, it's thinking about all those pieces in order to get there. But I think if you can share that vision of what, that holy grail, that summit is with your team, then we're all rowing in the same direction, and
Yeah.
they see the benefit of where we're going to go, and those difficulties in the change process can be overcome because we're all having a shared vision.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think have been sort of the changes that you've put in place that you are really happy with, and the ones that didn't work so effectively?
I think in most cases where we've taken a risk with adopting new technology and really focusing on how do we build those skills and integrate it into the organization have in most cases been the right decisions of pulling us forward, and at times those are the hardest ones to sell because we're fundamentally changing how we did things before. And we all know that everyone's favorite system is the one you just stopped using.
Yeah.
And making that change. And I think in most cases in my career, we've made good decisions in moving from one system to another, adapting to new technology, etc. And both through what we're able to accomplish for the organization in terms of meeting goals, delivering submissions, etc., but also organizational engagement of getting people on board that are motivated by doing things better and being involved in that change.
Yeah.
So I think those are the easiest ones. The other side of the coin, I think, has been trying to thread the needle on Reg Ops and our core capabilities. And then, Matt, as you had said earlier, everything else we're leading in terms of system, process, data that falls into our plate. And how do we appropriately structure our roles to take that on? Because I think, early on, the publishers or the Reg Ops professional just kind of, we kept taking everything on. So you'd be a publisher, a doc specialist, you do a little bit of IT testing, you'd work on data, you'd write a process.
Yeah.
And some people thrived, other people sunk. I mean, that was a huge job description.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now as we've grown and diversified a bit, now we have people that focus on publishing. That's their skill, and maybe they do some submission management on top of that.
Yeah.
And we've been able to create a data cohort or a process cohort, but are they working in symphony with each other as well as they could? I think that's the part that I don't think I've quite figured out, or we've figured out well. I think we can develop some deep skills, but there's something with the Reg Ops role that they have such organizational reach and understanding of the processes that as we silo some of that information or those roles into other groups, we lose some of that organizational agility.
Yeah.
And it's hard to duplicate that there. And I'm not quite sure what the right answer is. I don't think it's reverting and saying, hey, Reg Ops person, you're going to do everything again. But what's the right balance is probably the question.
Yeah, I agree. I'm seeing the same kind of thing and trying to manage it in my org as well. Because the proclivity of people in ops to be more technical lends them to, rabbit hole and get really deep on a lot of things. But I loved how you called it like a symphony, because they do have to work together seamlessly, and they do bleed into one another. And I think that where AI, and I'd love to hear your take on this too, because I think AI is going to start eating from the bottom task-wise. And then the idea is the folks that are doing those jobs are going to be the ones that need to be adaptable and resilient in that time period as this grows. And they are going to be training the robots, without a doubt. Like there's no way around it. So that is a really fascinating place to be, where like there's a ton of opportunity here now.
Yeah, I completely agree. And
expertise is so important now.
Yes.
But how do you square that with, Terminator was just a sci-fi movie, but like it's metaphorically it's eating away at our task relevance, right? So
Yeah. So I think that expertise that our professionals have today isn't going away anytime soon, because what their knowledge of not only how to execute the task, but how to interact with that group of people. So whether it's your development project team, your regulatory project team, clinical project team, whatever, that's not going to go away. We still need people to do that. The interesting part is, as they train the robots, and we're seeing this a little bit in some of the RPA tools that we've developed, and maybe in some of the AI tools that are still in their infancy, is how do we now see the bot or the agent as part of the team? Mm-hmm. And how do we identify the work product for the bot or the agent and allocate that to them almost as a team member, while the humans are essentially the manager of those people, ensuring that work gets done, the bot knows what to do, the bot's doing it correctly. Do we need to upgrade or upskill the bot in order to do whatever?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really weird way to think about work after dealing with humans for our entire life. Now it's, bot one, you're going to do all the document formatting checks. And here's how much work I expect from bot one in a typical day. Mm-hmm. And then Bob is overseeing bot one. Is it functioning correctly? Are we getting any errors? Are we getting any false positives? Whatever, to make sure we're continually iterating, which tells me that the human in the loop is going to be critical to ensure that technology is working correctly. But from a mindset perspective and a management perspective, it's a real different way to think about your organization.
Yeah. I think the idea of the bots doing so many of those things and experts understanding that they're now managing the bot to do it introduces something that I hope doesn't get out of control, which is, how do you control changes to the bots? And how do you make sure that that doesn't get to the point where we slow ourselves down needlessly there as well? A place where, take self-driving, for example. Like, I feel like when self-driving gets to the point where it's better in all instances than humans, it'll be irresponsible for us to drive. Right?
Correct.
So humans in the loop watching things that they used to have to do manually, at some point we're going to have to trust that it's just working, and that tipping point is the one that I'm really struggling to understand the time scale of. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't have a time scale. I think there's going to be a lot of change in the next 5 years, and because technology is pushing us along.
Yeah.
And what we're thinking of already, and we've seen that not only with automation, but even with the doc management and publishing tools today. There's a lot of automation that's included there, where we've already reduced the tasks that the publishers were doing a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So how are we looking at their career trajectory to making sure, one, we retain their knowledge and expertise, because they have part of that in the organization, which is critical. But two, how do we then expand that into other roles? So, there's probably many options, but if we just want to bifurcate it, it's, submission management makes a lot of sense. They understand what the packages should contain, what the requirements are, how to work with teams. And then there's also probably more of a technical data aspect of, a lot of our systems are now data driven. They understand the data that's needed from a submission standpoint, how do they take on that data owner, that data steward role to ensure we can continue to automate and ensure that our data is correct, and especially leading into data submissions like IDMP, PQCMC in the future, and ensuring we're compliant there. So I think there's options, but it's also providing those career paths to them and growing them into them.
You just made me think of one that I hadn't thought of before, which is the constant is going to be growth, change, and people coming into the organization who are new to do those same things. And this group of people will continually be really good teachers because they should know both what it does at the end and what it should do. And so that is an interesting one, like the evolution into like steward of the technology. Like, that sounds amazing. Like, if you're a publisher today making links and you think someday I will just get to explain this to somebody and I'm not going to be doing the clicks, and that expertise is, that's where like we come in, and our organizations have to understand that this is something, this expertise has to stay in the organization because of all these factors going away. But what they do is going to evolve no matter what. Like that is the part that is so crystal clear. And I think, as leaders in these organizations, really understanding that, I think, is so key, because we have to not only help our teams grow, but also explain what our teams are going to do, because more and more it's going to be, I don't want to say out of reach for people to really fathom. If they're a scientist, they don't want to think about the ops. It just has to work.
Correct.
But we have to know all of it so that it continues to work silently, which is wild.
Well, that's been our challenge as ops organizations have grown and become a vital part of regulatory or R&D organizations. Is, Matt, when we do our job, sure, we get a pat on our back, but it's not lauded, and it's just an expectation. So going back to that standard of everything needs to be on time and validation clean for everything we do. It's a high bar. And we execute that flawlessly in 99.9% of the time. That 0.01 or 0.1 is when people notice us, and it's the most backhanded compliment, because when we ask for feedback about the group, it's like, oh, you guys do your job so well, I don't even think about it. I'm like, well, that's great. However, the team would appreciate some recognition over what we've accomplished to meet the timeline or whatever was happening. So it's hard, because it's not that we're punished, but we're sometimes taken for granted because we do our job so well. And even as we push technology, we're incorporating it effectively enough that people don't always notice. So how many people would notice? It's like, well, we got this Viva upgrade, we're able to do X, Y, and Z now, and we're able to get the submission out 2 days earlier. And they have no idea. They just know the submission was out 2 days earlier. We did our job well. And all the black magic in the background, they don't really know or care about. And
interestingly, if you're at a really high functioning organization, you might be lucky to have 2 or 3 new drugs go out a year. The other thousands of submissions that went out the door, no one even blinks an eye. Like they just went, they were on time, probably early, some of them probably, well in advance, just churning through. Nobody even bats an eye. 1 or 2 get all the scrutiny, and you're just like, man, we got it covered. Don't worry, don't panic. We've done a bunch of these. And it's an interesting place to be for us, I think. And I greatly value your take on this, because I've certainly learned a lot, and my impatience sometimes gets the best of me, and you get ahead of it a little bit and want people to join you there. And you mentioned something that, like, we're pulling the organization forward. And that is a great way to think about it, I think, because the things that we spend our time on, we can't talk about at parties, and
No.
and no one would care, but they're big deals, right? And our people are experts at these things, but we get these amazing things, and we're just pulling people forward, trying to get them to see the light. And I love the curve, because on the other side of it is just peace and silence, which is where we like it to be, right?
Yeah, we can always hope so. And I think we still have such a critical role, Matt, because if you look at our strategy organizations, we're in ops and the related functions, we're concerned about data flows. How is this going to move into IDMP, PQF, CMC, et cetera?
Yeah.
Our strategists are worried about strategy, interactions with health authorities.
Yep.
And, there's a certain trust that's placed upon us that we've got that.
Yeah.
And we're going to be able to make those submissions, and they're going to be clean, correct, so that we can continue with, the review or the development and review approval cycles. So we almost, I don't know what the right word is, but we're a guide, or a trusted partner with the strategist to take care of that, so we have regulatory success.
Yeah.
And that's often a hard message for the ops folks, because it still feels like it's taken for granted a bit. But if you look at it, it's definitely a partnership that needs to function in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So as companies, we're doing the best we can for patients.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Scott, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about regulatory operations with me today, and look forward to seeing you out on the circuit. And maybe we'll do a part 2 on a couple of other topics that are going to come up, I'm sure, as this thing takes to life. So I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for the opportunity. It's always good to pick your brain and talk about these topics. I think we always have some interesting thoughts for folks, and I look forward to having another conversation in the future.
All right. Thank you, sir.